Good morning. It is Tuesday, May the 3rd, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have Roe v. Wade, talk show hosts, the collapse of parenting, no free lunch, and the big hole. All that and more when I come back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for May the 3rd. In my power you will rebuke and bind the princes of darkness. Beloved, meditate on my statutes. For they will be your delight and counsel when demonic princes sit and speak against you. When they persecute you without a cause, let your heart rejoice in my word as one who finds great treasure, because my word will bring great peace to you, and my righteous judgments will keep you from stumbling. My Holy Spirit has given you the power to rebuke and bind the princes of darkness. You do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. I am with you, and my power will give you the victory. Psalm 119, verses 23 through 24, Psalm 161 through 165, Matthew 12, chapter 12, verse 28, and Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. Prayer declaration. Father, in your Spirit's power, I will bind the prince of the power of the air. I command all principalities of darkness to fall at the name of Jesus. I rebuke and bind all demonic princes that would speak against me and persecute me. I will rejoice in your word and in your promise of great peace and righteous judgment. I cast out Beelzebub and all his demonic princes, and I rise victorious in your power. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for May the 3rd. Thank you. And now there's no free lunch. Quote, the one thing that people overlook is the sort of dependence that results from exchange, i.e. from commercial transactions. It's a reciprocal dependence. We cannot be dependent upon a foreigner without his being dependent upon us. Now, this is what constitutes the very essence of society. To sever natural interrelations is not to make oneself independent, but to isolate oneself completely." Unquote. Frederick Bastiat. Critics of free trade, properly understood, have always treated the concept as if there was a winner and a loser. We must understand the macro advantages to the producer to open up new markets for consumption and the advantages to the consumer to benefit from the comparative advantages of broader markets for production. And there's no free lunch. Thank you. What are the true conservative political priorities? Number one, a constitutional amendment banning abortion throughout the country. Number two, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Number three, the immediate decertification of all public employee unions. Number four, the immediate assignment of criminal and civil liability to all government regulators. Number five, the immediate repeal of the so-called Patriot Act. Number six, the immediate repeal of all dictator laws. Number seven, the reinstatement of writs of outlawry. Number eight, government-sponsored recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. Number nine, a flexible minimum wage. Number 10, means-tested health care. And number 11, the immediate and permanent prohibition of investment banking by any office holder. Back in a minute. Thank you. So I heard last night, as a matter of fact, but and again this morning, about a leaked draft of a case that supposedly is going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So, but it's supposed to return the matter to the courts. A couple of things on this. First of all, it reminds me that the left had been talking a lot about stacking the court, but they never did. They never really got around to it. It seems like they never really made an honest, earnest effort to stack the courts. They didn't show any urgency. They put in place some kind of a committee, which really is the death of any idea. If you have some kind of an idea and you want to kill it without killing it outright, you just form a committee to study it. And so then the committee came back with its recommendations. I don't know what it is. But the point is that why? Why would the Democrats go ahead and not make good on their threat to stack the court? Well, if we believe and understand that the real function of political parties, both political parties, is to elect people to raise funds, et cetera, then you're looking at it from a fundraising standpoint. What would be a better fundraiser for the Democrat Party than the overturn of Roe v. Wade? Right? So that may very well be, again, they're trying to be too clever by half. So first there's that. Second is the decision itself. And if it is true that the decision comes out and says that we're turning everything over to the states, this is no good. This is simply saying morality is up for grabs, that morality is whatever the population wants it to be, whatever popular culture wants it to be at any given time. Because that's what they're doing, is they're turning it over to the states and letting the states decide. But if we understand abortion correctly, that it is homicide and not justifiable homicide, there is no way you can justify the homicide of a baby, much less an unborn child, then there's no way you would turn that over to the tender mercies of popular opinion. We don't do that with murder. We don't do that with rape. And we shouldn't, nor should we. So there are absolutes in this universe. Murder is, for instance, wrong everywhere, for everyone, at all times. It was immoral 1,000 years ago. It'll be immoral 1,000 years from now. We know that with absolute certainty. So that's the way this has to be treated. The court basically, on the moral issue, punted and said, well, we'll let somebody else decide. And that's wrong. Homicide is not up for a vote. Thank you. So I'm listening to Dan Bongino on the radio, and he is doing what conservatives usually do in a situation like that, and that is turning a celebration into a funeral. He is snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. How is he doing it? By doing the same damn thing that every one of the fucking morons on the right, on right-wing talk radio always do, and that is concentrating on what the left is doing. What is the left's reaction? Who cares? This is something, this overturn, if this turns out to be that, because we're still just talking about, we're still speculating, because this is supposedly a draft, but if this turns out to be an overturn of Roe v. Wade, this is what conservatives have wanted for decades. Dan Bongino should be celebrating. And I sent him a tweet where I was sarcastic. I said, way to go, Mr. Bongino. You have turned what should be a celebration into a funeral, because he concentrates on the left and what the left is thinking, what the left is doing, what the left wants. Who damn cares? Who bloody well cares what they want or what they think, especially when it comes to life? They've been on the wrong side of this issue from the beginning, since the 1970s. And they continue to be on the wrong side, and they get wrong, more and more wrong. They want to have partial birth abortion. Then they want to be able to give complete birth to the baby and then still kill it. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. They've been on the wrong side of this issue. We have been on the right side of this issue for decades. We must celebrate. Celebrate. And that's what you need to do when you may think, well, what happens when I go into work and I've got to, I got to go to deal with the left-wingers in my work. I'm in the break room, and one of the left-wingers come in, and they're going to give me gas about this. You tell them this is what's best for women. That's what you tell them. This is what's best for women. I don't understand why you're so upset. This is what's best for women. And you can say it with a straight face, because abortion is really only good for horny men. Okay? Abortion was supposed to be a power thing for women, so that women could get to decide when to procreate or when not to procreate. But what it's turned into is a boost for men, for horny frat boys. The frat boy goes ahead and gets you pregnant. He throws you a 20, go get an abortion. You're lying on a cold table somewhere with your feet in the stirrups while a complete stranger probes around in your private parts, and Mr. Frat Boy isn't even there to hold your hand. Is he? He's out. He's busy fucking somebody else. This is who it's benefiting. If you really want to exercise power, what you would do is when he throws you the 20 for the abortion, say, thank you. That's going to be a down payment on baby formula and baby diapers, because I'm not having an abortion. And then you want to see the look on his face when you say that? That's power. That's real power. You want power, all you pseudo-feminists out there, you want real power, give birth. Celebrate life, because in life there's power. There's no power in death. That's what you tell these people. It is because it's the truth. And also, they're going to sit there with their mouths open because they're not going to expect you to come up with that. They're going to think that you're going to apologize, because that's what Dan Bongino is basically doing. He's on the radio right now apologizing for this decision, while at the same time claiming to be a conservative, claiming that he's pro-life, claiming that what's the best for everybody is to get rid of abortion, but at the same time apologizing for it. So you don't take your cues from right-wing talk radio. You're going to hear every one of these boobs on the right do the same damn thing. They're going to judge this so-called decision not based on its merits, in other words, what was written on the page, or on its consequences, but they're going to base it on the reaction of their political enemies. Don't do that. Understand and celebrate. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. This is what's best for everybody. It's what's best for men. It's what's best for women. And that's all there is to it. So don't be afraid. Don't walk out of your house, got to hide because I'm going to get a lot of gas. You just go right at them. Hey, it's what's best for women. Congratulations. You've just been empowered. That's what you tell them. So, but Dan Bongino is wrong. He's out here, again, and all the right-wing talk show hosts are going to do the same thing. They're going to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. Don't let them do it. Thank you. And now some selections from the book, The Collapse of Parenting. And which chapter is this anyway? Is this chapter 4, I think? Nope, chapter 7. We're getting right along here. A parent in Sandy, Utah, near Salt Lake City, told me that she didn't allow any of her children to have cell phones, period, right through high school. I just never saw the need for it, this mom told me. And the other kids didn't have a problem with it. No big deal. But the other parents gave this mom a hard time. Why are you making her the odd girl out? They would ask her. So whether you live in Utah, Florida, California, New York, do what's best for your child. Don't be too concerned about other kids or other parents might say. And this is from Dr. Sachs, who wrote the book, The Collapse of Parenting. Now, this is exactly goes to my point. How is it that the left spreads its poison? And it is through peer pressure. Peer pressure. You would normally expect in this particular case that it would be the kids that would give the other child a hard time. But don't forget, there's also peer pressure amongst the parents. And it is up to you as a parent to push back. If it's me, I'm not going to put up with that at all. I'm just going to tell these parents, why don't you go take a hike? It's none of your business how it is that I raise my child. Here's another example right here. It's called the next misconception. I want my child to be independent. So when she talks back to me or is disrespectful, I try to see that in a positive light as a sign that she's becoming more independent. And I support that. And the doctor responds, it is never acceptable for your child to be disrespectful to you. And he's absolutely correct. And the other thing is, again, as a parent that's doing the right thing, you have to exert peer pressure on other parents. If other parents are letting their kids talk to them, be disrespectful to them, the one example he had in here was where the kid was getting into the car. His mom asked how his day was, and he says, turn around, shut up, drive. Okay, no. And if you're going to allow your child to do that to you, then your child's going to end up doing it to me. So in that particular case, I'm going to tell the parent, don't bother to come over for hot dogs or whatever, and I don't want your kid on my property, okay? You stay the hell away from me, and you stay the hell away from my family, okay? You put counter peer pressure on. Next misconception. I just want my son to be happy. What makes him happy is different from what makes me happy. I'm thinking I might just have to accept that. And he goes on to answer, this mom has a teenage son who spends 20 hours a week playing video games, and she's trying to get him away from the video games to encourage him to do better in school so he gets into a good college, etc. And he blew up and had a fit, and he doesn't want to get into a college, on and on and on. So here's his response when mom says, I just want him to be happy. I told mom that she was confusing happiness with pleasure. Excellent point. Happiness comes from the idea of Aristotle. Aristotle said that the ultimate aim for every human being is happiness. That's where we get the pursuit of happiness in our Constitution or in the Declaration of Independence is from Aristotle. But Aristotle doesn't mean psychological happiness. He's talking about virtue, of living a virtuous life. Living the virtuous life is the life that's going to be the life of happiness. Okay, the left today deliberately misconstrues what Aristotle is saying and has it mean psychological happiness. Okay, and that's not what it's about. Now, he calls it pleasure, but another way of putting it is psychological happiness. He says that's common today. A trip to the video arcade may be a source of pleasure, but will not give lasting and enduring happiness. This mother's son derives pleasure from playing video games, but playing video games in an online world is unlikely to be a source of real fulfillment. The pleasure derived from a video game may last for weeks or even months, but will not last many years. And in my first-hand observation, many of the young men over the past 2 decades, the boy either moves on to something else or the happiness undergoes a silent and malignant transformation into addiction. And the hallmark of addiction is decreasing pleasure over time. The pleasure is not the same thing as happiness. The gratification of desire yields pleasure, not lasting happiness. Happiness comes from fulfillment, from living up to your potential, which means more than playing online video games. And he goes on to say, Mom should trust her instincts. Her son playing World of Warcraft 20 hours a week is not fulfilling his potential. He's indulging a desire, an uneducated desire. Mom needs to disconnect the video game and redirect her son. And he further says, such redirection is not fun. It's not easy. Your son will not thank you for it now or next week or next month. Maybe in 5 years, maybe. But you aren't doing this job in order to win your son's approval. You are doing this job because it is your job as a parent to help your child find and to fulfill his or her potential. And it's never simple because neither you or the child can know in advance precisely where your child's potential lies, but it certainly doesn't consist in spending 20 hours a week playing video games. Turn off the device. The same considerations hold if your child or teen says that they're happiest when uploading videos to Instagram or surfing the web. So again, it is up to the parents to set the rules in the house. Like the one lady said, her kids didn't get cell phones. And when I was growing up, it was the same thing. We didn't have cell phones, but we had kids that were, some of the kids were spoiled. They had in their own room, they had not only their own television, but they had their own phone. They had their own phone line. So if you wanted to call and talk to them, you could. So when the parents would send them to their room, go to your room. It wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, so he goes to his room, turns on the TV, maybe picks up the phone, calls one of his friends. Not such a big deal. Not such a big punishment. For the vast majority of kids, you wanted to watch TV, it was in the living room. One television in the living room. There was one, maybe 2 telephones. One might be in the parents' room, and then the other may be in, say, in the kitchen. Ours was located in the kitchen, and one phone line. So there's none of this nonsense of I'm gonna, I have my own phone line. You're right then. You're not living in a family. You're a renter or you're living in a boarding house. That's not a family. So, good idea to keep, again, even with computers, one computer for the family and have it in somewhere where you can keep an eye on what's going on and monitor not only what's being done on that computer, but how long the kids are spending on that computer. Next misconception. If I love my child, that means I also trust my child, right? If she says she didn't cheat on the test and I love her, then I have to trust her, right? You can't have love without trust, but you don't have to be a sap either. If your child is, let's say, lied to you in the past, has a track record of being deceptive, then you have to take note of that. You have to challenge them. Wait a minute, you said you got an A on the test, but you've lied to me before. So now I want to see proof. And when I think I can trust you again, then I'll start taking your word for it again. So He says, again, this misconception is easier to understand if you know the context. This girl was taking a test at school. Teacher caught the girl looking at her cell phone during the test and copying answers from it. The teacher confiscated the cell phone and sent the girl to the principal's office. The girl insisted that the teacher had made a mistake. The phone just happened to be in her lap, but she wasn't looking at it, so she said. The principal supported the teacher's decision to mark the test a 0. The parents went ballistic. They swooped in like prosecuting attorneys. It's just like the teacher's word against the word of our daughter, the father said. Our daughter said she didn't do it, and our daughter would never lie to us. Mom took a more reflective, less adversarial tone than her husband. That's when she said, if I love my child, etc., etc. The short answer to Mom's question, the rules of love between parent and child are different from the rules between adults. I think that's a pretty good answer right there. Maybe it's true that love between adults requires blind trust. It's certainly not true of a parent's love for a child. The father in this case said, our daughter would never lie to us. I don't know what family, but I know that father is wrong. I don't know that family, but I know that father is wrong. Any parent who says such a thing is wrong. Your daughter or son is more likely to lie to you than anyone else because she doesn't want to disappoint you. She doesn't want to let you down. And she hopes that you will think well of her, even if she does value her peers' opinions more highly than yours. Which brings us back to cheating. In the previous chapter, we discussed the rise of cheating amongst American kids, including good kids who work hard and get good grades. American kids today usually consider cheating to be no big deal. Almost everybody's doing it, or they know someone who is. But many kids have an uneasy feeling, which happens to be correct, that their parents were raised in a different era, an era in which good kids did not cheat. The temptation to lie to parents about cheating is very strong. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, chapter 26, the second part of chapter 26, The Big Hole. And this is from the book Tales from My Bicentennial Year by Michael Buell, the adventures of a family growing up, particularly the adventures of the second eldest child, Michael, growing up in Gansevoort, New York, in the Adirondacks. And so this is the first part of this chapter. They had, because of the previous chapter, the kids, Michael and his friends, Big Gene and whatnot, had misbehaved, and they started a fire that they shouldn't have started. And so they all got in trouble, and they had to go and do some painting at the church. And they thought they were going to have to paint the church, but they ended up having to paint the shed instead. So that means it didn't take as long. So they had time left over. And so Big Gene again gets them into trouble, so to speak, because he says, let's go to it's called the Big Hole. And it's supposed to be like a swimming hole somewhere, but their parents have told them you are not to go to the Big Hole. People have died there and whatnot. So this is, they've gotten to the point where they went ahead and did it anyway. So they rationalized their behavior, and they've decided they're going to go ahead and look for this big hole anyhow. Since they got the time, they got to the point, there's a trail, and they followed this trail till it gets to this big 30-foot wall. And so that's where they are now, is at this 35-foot wall looking to get over it. After watching Huge Gene make a little progress moving up the wall of granite, it became a little easier for Lil Brad and me to make our way up. Huge Gene was putting his feet in these little indents in the cracks of granite. Then, with his hands reaching up to grab a tree branch or something and pull himself up to the next spot. This seemed to work, and pretty soon we had a little convoy headed up the rock outcropping. Huge Gene finally announced that he had made it up, and then he leaned over and was helping to pull me and Brad up the rest of the way. He yelled back down to Mike C., "You want to try one more time, or stay there? I can probably pull you up with a long tree branch or something." Mike C. yelled back up, "Just go ahead, I'll wait by the bikes. If I ruin my cast, I'm a dead man." Which was true. Big John had threatened Mike C. with death several times over if anything happened to that cast. I was trying to figure out by questioning Big John how you could die more than once, but he was not in a very philosophical debating mode at that time, and my questions about death went unanswered. Now that we knew Mike C's status of staying below, we turned around and focused our attention to finding this damn big hole. We stood up, turned around, and looked right smack in the face of another outcropping of rocks. God damn it, yelled Huge Gene. Now what? The water must be real close because the sound of the water was getting louder and louder, and in some spots you could feel raindrops hitting you. Even the temperature seemed to go down a few degrees in some places. This rock wall was shaped like a big beer belly. Little Brad said it looked like his dad's gut. You could see the big trees on top, maybe another 30 feet or so up, and then a large potbelly of smooth rock steeped out and gave you almost a circular surface to get up. As we walked around trying to figure out how we could go around it or up it or down and back some other way, little Brad beamed a smile from ear to ear, pointed real quickly and said, "Look, a rope." Once you got up to it, you could see it. Someone had tied a big long piece of rope to one of the big trees on top. Then they threw it down the belly of the rock. Then someone on the bottom of the rocks pulled it over and tucked it into a little gully. We all zoomed over, eager to be climbing to the top. Huge Gene, of course, went first. He pulled on the rope really hard before he even left his feet. "I want to make sure it's going to hold me," he said. He gave it a couple of more tugs and then began to climb up, hand over hand, foot over foot, pulling himself up. He got up about halfway, paused, looked, took a little breath, and then continued. "I'm up. Next," he yelled down. I grabbed the rope and did the same thing Huge Gene did. Hand over hand, foot over foot, pulling myself up. When I got about halfway up, I paused, took a deep breath, and then did a most unfortunate thing. I looked down. Not only down, but out and around. Even though my body may have been only 10 feet or so off the nearest ground, when I looked down from the top of that little mountain, you could see the entire valley. It gave me the feeling that I was 100 miles up the side of a steep cliff, like I was hanging on a rip line on the side of El Capitan in the wind. I held the rope tight now, not moving up or down, just staying right there. Huge Gene yelled down, "What the hell, man? Come on, it's only a few feet. Quit slowing us down." Then I had little Brad yelling up at me, "Geez, will you just climb up, you wuss?" I had to muster up my guts and move up this rock or never hear the end of it. I stopped looking down and turned my head up, just trying to focus on the few feet I had left to climb. I moved my left hand up, then my right, hand over the left, followed that with my feet, right foot up over left foot. Before you knew it, I was standing next to Huge Gene, telling little Brad to hurry up. Finally, the three of us were up. The top of this mountain had flattened out a little bit. All we could see through were more pine trees, more forest, and that same small little path. But we could really hear the water running. It was cold and misty up there. The water had to be close. We ran down the path faster and faster. We simply had to see the big hole. The trail finally came to a stop, and the trees guarding the hole finally gave way. There were these vast fields of large, flat rocks with just an inch or two of water spread over them. Not every rock patch had a water on it. So we ran around jumping in the small streams of water and hopping onto the dry patches. This little water world was maybe half the size of a football field. But where the heck was the big hole? Little Brad, the scientist in the group, announced, "This must be the beginning of Skull Creek, which comes out all the way at the bottom of town. I bet it's spring-fed. The water just comes right to the top." Sounded good to me, but still, where the heck was this big hole? We ran down and around this water and rock field. Down a little farther, the water was getting deeper, and you could feel the streams of water moving faster and faster. "Wow, holy you-know-what," I screamed out. I had reached the edge of this little water park. I was standing on top of a big rock, no water where I was standing, but water streaming around both sides of my rock. I crept a little farther out on the rock, and there it was, the big hole. The water from both sides around me now plunged down about 15 feet straight down. Other water streams ran down over the sides away from that. There was, for about 20 feet or so on each side of me, a small waterfalls that fell off the ledge and plunged down the cliff. Right under me, the two big streams merged into one and went crashing down the cliffside, pouring into this big hole of water. You could actually see a big hole filled with water, with all the little streams going into the hole. The water filled up the hole and then quietly spilled over the hole and formed a nice, quiet stream, maybe 10 feet wide at the bottom. Looking out from the top of my rock, I could see for miles as the stream wound its way through the woods and out of this little canyon of granite. Huge Gene and Brad ran to my spot. For more than a few minutes, we just stood in awe, looking around. Behind you was this water park of little small streams gently flowing over these big rock sheets. Straight down was the waterfall and then the big hole. Past that was a view of the stream and pine trees flowing away from you. It was a pretty dramatic scene. Well, I had this figured differently than Huge Gene and Brad. I walked over to the side with the small streams of water going over the cliff and started climbing down the rocks. Little by little, I made my way down. I was crawling over the rocks on the side of the big hole water. I could wade a little bit into the water, but I could see that the waterfall had cut a deep hole into the stone. I took a long stick from the side and tried to stick it in and find the bottom of the hole to see how deep it was. I circled my way around the big hole until I was right in front of it. I was in the stream now. I walked slowly toward the deep waters of the big hole until I was up to my neck. The stick I was holding was twice as long as me, and still I could not touch the bottom. I looked up and shouted, "I can't touch the bottom with the stick. I'm touching right here, but in front it goes down forever." With that, Huge Gene jumped straight out over the water, feet first, and plunged into the water. He went down into the water right in front of the waterfall and splashed into the big hole. Brad bent over and looked down, hands on his knees, peering for a glimpse of Huge Gene coming to the surface. His fat ass landed right in front of me, and the waves engulfed me like a tidal wave, sending the water over my head, knocking me back into the stream. It took a minute of backstepping, but I got my balance and stood up, head above water, spitting out the clean, clear, and very cold water. Brad was yelling something, but my head and ears were full of water. I couldn't hear him. Brad was frantic now, jumping up and down on the rock. I gained a little more semblance of balance and looked around for Huge Gene. Nothing. He was nowhere in sight. Now I could hear Brad. "Where is he? Get him out." I looked around again for him. Still nothing. Not even the "I'm drowning" bubbles you were supposed to see. I looked up at Brad, and sucking up all the courage I could, I dove into the deep water, waving my arms around, trying to find Huge Gene. After a second, I opened my eyes, and I could see a little bit through the water. I saw him, I think, but he was coming from above me and plunging lower. Then up he came. I needed air, so I followed him up. There on top of the water, doggy paddling, were me and little Brad, who had jumped in to find Huge Gene, and found me instead. We swam over to the front of the stream out of the big hole and looked around again for Huge Gene. We were both white as ghosts now. The bad thoughts started to creep into my head. We ran to the shoreline and screamed at the top of our lungs, "Gene, Gene, Gene!" I don't know why we were screaming if we thought he was under the water, but we didn't know what else to do. I ran up and down the shoreline, Brad doing the same thing on the other side. About 30 feet or so down or so, I jumped on a big boulder, raised my hands to my mouth to make a megaphone, and yelled, "Huge Gene, you big fat ass, where are you?" Then I looked down and saw him. A big fat-assed Huge Gene lying on the side of the stream like a beached whale. "Brad, I got him," I yelled. Little Brad flew over the rocks and stream and met me next to him. Huge Gene had jumped in with all of his clothes and sneakers and stuff on. I took him by the shirt collar and shook him with both hands. Not that this was any life-saving technique that I saw from Johnny Gage, the paramedic on TV's Emergency. I just didn't know what else to do. I slapped him, and luckily, yes, luckily, he slapped me back. Then we both started laughing. Huge Gene was half laughing and half spitting up water. He said that when he jumped in the big hole, he got caught up in some kind of wave. He felt like he was in a washing machine, spinning around and around on the bottom. Then it just shot him out down the stream. He said he saw me walking in the water as he went shooting by me. Wow, I was happy he was alive. I mean, we didn't need another weekend of trouble. Somehow I'm sure that Huge Gene drowning would certainly be trouble for us. We gathered up our stuff, shook ourselves off, and figured we'd better get out of there. I climbed back up, but couldn't find my new radio that I'd left in the water park area before it went down. Must have gotten taken away by the water, little Brad said. Well, that sucks, I exclaimed. Now I'd be in trouble for losing that. Well, anyways, we climbed down the rope, down the other outcropping of rocks, down the hill, through the path, and there was Mike C. Hope you don't mind, but I ate all the food. I didn't have anything else to do. Then I heard all of you yelling about the fun you were having, so I ate. No problem, we told him. We told Mike C. all about it as we made our way down the path with the bikes. Anyone see ya? Little Brad asked Mike C. No, it was cake, he answered. We made it home, and all seemed okay. That was until we were playing baseball in my backyard the next day. Bobby Donlin and his hooligan Third Streeters wanted to play us, which we were happy to oblige. My mom came out with some Kool-Aid she had made for all of us, along with some cookies. So we all stopped and took some. Bobby Donlin, always a gentleman, thanked my mother. Thank you, ma'am, he said before we had the chance to thank her. Then the real topper. I see Bobby Dolan reaching down into his knapsack, and then I hear, go on, take the money and run. Billy Mack is a detective down in Texas. You know he knows just exactly what the facts is. What you got there, Bobby? I asked. It's a transistor radio I found, he said. Like it? That's mine. I saved up and bought it. Give it back, I demanded. My mother at this point took a bit of interest in this. Bobby, she said, where did you find it? I found it at the Big Hole when I went swimming late yesterday, and now it's mine. He sobbed like a little baby. Well, then it can't be yours, can it, Mike? Because you're not allowed at the Big Hole. Right, Mike? My mom asked me back. I sighed, beaten again. I could not confess that we all went to the Big Hole, especially since all the guys were staring at me, telling me telepathically not to utter a single word. If I couldn't confess, then I had to give my radio to Bobby Donlin. Beaten again. And that was the end of second part of chapter 26, The Big Hole, from the book Tales from My Bicentennial Year by Mike Buell. Back in a minute. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, and reminding you to listen to the John and Ken Show on KFI AM 640, Monday through Friday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Also, KFI needs to bring back Brian Suits and his show, The Dark Secret Place. # bring back Brian Suits. Until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.